Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini. Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Vrudatuhe Namaha. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are on one of the very popular chapters of Bhagavad Gita called the Karma Yoga chapter, or the Yoga of Action. This art of action, or art of living, which we call as Karma Yoga, is something where Sri Vedavyasa really introduces the concept for us beings who are constantly working in this world, many different things, on really how we have to put our energy into that action. So this definitely was addressed in the second chapter, and we saw that information was way too much for Arjuna. It really went way above his head. So, which is why the third chapter is focused only on that aspect. And Arjuna, being the dynamic man of action, was meant for him, but it is meant for us too. So for today, we'll see a reflection time before we get into the next 3 shlokas, which I'm hoping to complete today. They're all very deep, very powerful shlokas, but let us see how much we can cover today. So let's start with the first. In the first 3 shlokas, I have these following reflective questions. And even though they seem simple enough, there is really a lot of, I would say, there is a depth in why these questions were put together. This is by Vedavyasa ji. So let's go to the first one. What did Arjuna think that Lord Krishna wanted him to do? What is it that Arjuna thought that Lord Krishna wanted him to do? What do you think?
He thought that knowledge is superior than action.
Well, we'll come to that. That's going to be my second question. But really, why did Arjuna kind of react the way he did in the very first shloka?
He wanted him to fight, right? Fight the battle.
Yes, he wanted him, exactly. He thought, Arjuna was kind of shocked. Arjuna was shocked that Krishna was telling him to go ahead and, kill his kith and kin, create all that bloodshed. That's what Arjuna really thought Krishna was asking him to do, right? But let's go to the second question then. But did Krishna really wanted him to do that? What do you think?
I mean, that had like a lot of inner meaning, but yeah, so superficially, yes, but he did have a valid reason why he wanted to do it that way, or like why he wanted him to fight.
Uh-huh. So Krishna
So,
really, yeah, go ahead.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Suresh.
Hari Om. Krishna wanted Arjuna to re-engage in fight, but also with the sense of that he's not the doer, or he's not the one that is owning the fruits of the action with the dispassion, if you will. So that is what he wanted to impart.
Okay, good point, Suresh. But I think in the first shloka of third chapter, right? Krishna actually never really told him what he should be doing. Krishna just presented to him two scenarios. That's all he did. He just told him that, hey, you have this, you have that. Now, the reason why I'm bringing these points up here is some things that, this is again to get this great appreciation of how our Shastras have really introduced this fantastic philosophy of how to really live in this world, Krishna never really told him what to do. He just told him, okay, these are the two paths. And it was only a suggestion. And it's up to Arjuna really how he takes it, right? So the reason I also want to bring this is that many people say that Bhagavad Gita really teaches how to, be violent. And, Krishna told Arjuna that he should be doing it. So I wanted to bring this point up. And, even though Lord Krishna gave that entire philosophy in the second chapter, but when he started off the third chapter, he really didn't say anything. He just told, hey, Arjuna, these are the things. Now let's see, now this is also very thought-provoking, which I'll come to at the end of this questions here. But let me come to the third question. So what made Arjuna think that Krishna was asking him to do this action? Again, this is just, questions to ponder upon. I know it's late in the day and I'm asking too many of these kind of questions here. Let me say this. So what made Arjuna think that Krishna was asking to do this action is because in the second chapter, he gave him enough of those shlokas. It's almost like, when we want to market a product, we cannot tell anyone, hey, just buy this particular vegan food and, this will do great thing. You just go and buy this. We don't say that. We give all the benefits of that food, which then makes us go to it, right? So that's what exactly he was trying to do, because Krishna presented the path of knowledge with the shlokas, and then he presented to him the path of action. And Arjuna, being the man of action, he really did not immediately gravitate to the path of knowledge. He immediately thought that Krishna was really asking him to kill. So I just wanted to bring that aspect about also how we in our minds, we hear some things sometimes and we immediately gravitate to it, thinking that we gravitate to it based upon our own nature, our own prakriti, right? So that is something to think about on how this was really presented. So then overall, now here, this one, I would love to have all your input. What is it that really leads to such confusions in our thinking? I guess I already said some things, but what do you think? What is it that really leads to this kind of confusion, which Arjuna went through, which we are calling it as a confusion? Arjuna probably never thought. Arjuna thought that he's asking a great question, a very smart question, right? Any thoughts on what is it that leads to this kind of confusion in our thinking?
Is it our delusion?
Yes, it is a delusion, but how does a delusion, what is the cause for that delusion? So it is really the attachment to our own ideologies, right? So for example, even when we have a simple discussion or a conversation or whatever, we always want to assert our point, or we tend to look at things based on the lens of attachment, which causes a delusion. So we have this attachment, we don't listen to things very well, and there are other things that leads to all these distractions. So all this leads to kind of a confusion, which is what we saw in the first two shlokas of this Bhagavad Gita, of this third chapter, where we find that Arjuna is asking a question based on how he understood the second chapter. And the whole third chapter now goes into really what are the qualities about each one of us that creates that delusion, due to which we misunderstand what people talk to us. So I just thought I'll put this up to show that how so many things from here, Lord Krishna, used the first three shlokas to show how what a great way to motivate somebody to get to this knowledge. What a way to really show how we kind of derail ourselves by our own ideologies. So overall, I think Lord Krishna is showing us a great way to motivate Arjuna, which we can learn from Gita. And as a teacher, he did not directly tell Arjuna what to do, but he actually, through his way of telling it, he showed him about it. But then Arjuna was not listening. His mind was too deeply thinking about all the sorrow that he might be going through, everything about this aham and mama that we talked about. And that is why the confusion. Anyway, sorry, this reflection was a little longer, but the three shlokas that we saw last time is the shlokas which Arjuna is asking Krishna, hey, Krishna, why are you asking me to do this terrible action? After Krishna gave him the entire philosophy, the only thing Arjuna is thinking about is, okay, why are you making me do this? Why am I really, being pushed into it? That was the question here. And then in the second one, he's telling that, you're really confusing me with this two different paths. Arjuna was this army person. He was used to really giving and taking orders. Things were black and white for him. There are no gray areas. So and this is again something to think about too for us, is how clear we have to be in our mind in order to be able to accept things. And here Arjuna's mind was not clear, so he was confused. And that is why this word vyamishreneva iva vakyena. Vyamishreneva meaning totally confusing. Vyamishreneva iva vakyena buddhim, in my mind. Moha, confusion, delusion. You're creating all this thing to me. And in all this, I'm thinking about that there is two different paths. Tada ekam vada nishchitya. Tell me for sure, what is the only one which will give me shreyas or greater good? Just tell me that part of it. That is the only thing what he's trying to ask him. So then we saw Lord Krishna answering him with, until now, again, Krishna being patient, a great teacher, he tells him that, he just wants to wait until Arjuna has cleared his mind and want to, and then he comes and says this. He doesn't tell him, hey, Arjuna, what a great question. I never thought about this or anything. He didn't want to, increase the ego of Lord Krishna or anything. And all he said was, let's just get to what you want to know. So he starts off his answer to Arjuna. And you will see that in third chapter, which is so beautiful dialogue, there's literally a dialogue which happens. Even when Arjuna may not have asked a question, one can think about what the question would have been from Arjuna. So this is a kind of a simple shloka we saw last time, where he says, where Lord Krishna starts off by saying, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, referring to Lord Krishna, Loke asmin dvividha nishtha. Loke, in this world, there is asmin dvividha, dvi referring to two, dvividha nishtha. There are two kinds of people. And who are they? And this has been there for a very, very long time. Pura prokta maya anagha. Anagha meaning, referring to again Arjuna. He refers to Arjuna as, hey, Arjuna, you are such a naive person. You are, no, naive is not the right word here. You are sinless. He says sinless here, which is you are so pure-minded. I want to tell you that it is not that I'm giving you two different paths or anything, but I want to tell you that this kind of a situation existed for a very, very long time. And what is those two things? One is, it is called the path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga, and the Jnana Yoga, which is followed by the Sankhyans, or the people who are the thinkers. And the next one is the Karma Yoga path, which is followed by the path of action. So here we see that even though it is being put as two paths, the path of knowledge and the path of action, we talked a little bit about this last time, about the fact that these two are not two different paths. As an example, in Detroit, where we live here, we have something called the 16-mile road, right? The 16-mile road is called as, Quarton Road. It's called as Big Beaver Road. And it's called the 16-mile road too.
Metro Parkway too.
Metro Parkway too, that's right. Thank you. It's such a long road, right? But it is not as if it is two different roads. It's just one road becoming the other road, correct? So too, what you will see is this path of action is the one which is prior to the path of knowledge. So one has to literally go through the path of action to go to the path of knowledge. So this is something that, and sometimes people look at this as path of action and path of knowledge as something, as different. And it is different in the case where if you were to act in this world, or whatever we do, with an idea of doing something for myself. Now, that is a path of karma. But here we are talking about karma yogena, where that path of action is a path of yoga, karma yoga. Karma yoga indicating the shloka from 2nd chapter, which is karmanye vadikaraste, that shloka, where whatever I'm doing, I'm not only not thinking about, which Suresh pointed out earlier too, which is the doership, where I do not have the doership, and I'm also not enjoying the results of that action. So that is karma yoga. So here we are looking at that path, which is path of action, karma yoga, is the step prior to the step of jnana yoga. So this is the two different paths. And this actually was, we talked last time about how it is also mentioned in the Bhashya of, when we say Pura Prokta, where Shankaracharya ji refers to this as that this two paths have been available for this two different type of people for a very long time. And this is the Pravritti Marga and the Nivritti Marga. Pravritti Marga is the path of action. Nivritti Marga is the path of renunciation. So these two paths have always been existed. The path of action is the Karma Yoga, and this world basically functions by the aspect of both these paths coming together. that is the path of karma yoga, where people are doing karma, and the path of jnana yoga, which is the nivritti marga, which is a path of detachment, or the path of vairagya, where people are giving up even this aspect of action, or giving that aspect, because there is no need for action at all to get to this. And we will get into that whole genesis of what does it mean by path of no action, etc., which is coming up in the next shlokas here. So we see that the next shloka, which is coming up, shloka 4, might look like as if it is suddenly, from where did Lord Krishna introduce this path of no action or actionlessness? So basically, you see, Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna that, in a sense, actually, these two paths, this path of action, karma yoga, and this path of jnana yoga, they both are important. Like I said, if you're really going on 16 mile all the way, 16 mile can become quarter at a later time, but at the same time, you need to go through both of them, right? So both the paths are needed, this is needed, although for sure the jnana yoga might seem as more superior to it, and we will be discussing a lot of why it is superior. But the whole idea where Krishna is coming is that he's telling Arjuna, hey, Arjuna, you pick the path, what works for you. And you being a person of action, for sure, I think this path of karma yoga might work well for you, because the path of knowledge is more for the thinkers who are really, who want to think a lot, who are the thoughtful ones, and who can just revel in that knowledge. And so that's the kind of thing which we will talk about. What is that path of knowledge later? So Arjuna must have, when Krishna told him that, you seem like an energetic extrovert, and for an energetic extrovert, sometimes these different, this path of action is great. Arjuna must have thought that, hey, that makes me sound like I'm a brute. You're telling me to kill, but tell you what, Krishna, I'm sure that I can also be very quiet, and I can also be thoughtful, and I'm sure I can give up this terrible action. You think that I'm suited for that, you think I'm suited for this, something else, but I can actually retreat to the forest too. So tell me more about this. That's basically what he wants to tell him. Arjuna is probably asking this to Krishna in his own mind, I'm sure, which is probably what prompts this very next shloka, but before going to the shloka, I want to give you an analogy on how these two paths also works with a very simple analogy. I just want to give this example of what it is to learn to ride a bike and to enjoy that ride on a bike. So this is the comparison of the path of action and the path of knowledge. So learning to ride a bike is like the path of action, and enjoying the ride on the bike is the path of knowledge. Okay, I'll be coming to more and more later on to explain what it is, but I thought this would be a very simple way for now to explain this concept itself. So let's start with, when you want to ride a bike, what are all the things you need to think about when you're riding a bike? There is so much to do, and I'm sure you will all, you'll go with this flow of thought what I have here. So first of all, in order to ride a bike, I have to overcome the fear. I have to overcome all my fear of the things that, when I fell down, all these experiences that I had. Many times, some of them are true, but some of them are also a kind of a fear that I would have built within myself. So, in order to do this, overcome the fear, then I'll have to think about, okay, how am I going to prevent a fall, I have to get a helmet and everything. So that's the kind of thing that I would take in order to overcome this fear for myself, which is of equipping myself with the safety elements, what is needed, right? And this happens in our life too, in our experiences in the path of action. We tend to take things which we can secure ourselves. Maybe we try to earn enough money to get a bank balance, we get a nice house with the right equipment, all that to overcome this fear. The second thing we try to do is we learn to try to balance. So this is an important thing which we try to do. And we try to learn how to balance by, going slowly, going different speeds, and trying to get a feel for the things. And so too, in action, in this path of action, in the path of success that we do, we make sure that we try to balance our priorities in this 4 different paths of, in the area of physical, mental, spiritual, and even in social aspects. We try to balance our time, our energy, and everything. Again, I'm using the path of action here. So in the path of action, we learn to balance a lot of these things, and all of these aspects of being physical, mental, spiritual, and social, they all have to work together in order to make sure that my life is in balance. The third thing is I have to learn to break. And how do I do this? Because life throws all kind of things to us. We need to learn how to break accordingly, right? So these obstacles, really cannot be avoided. We saw this happening to us too, with COVID being here in a very large sense. In a small sense, when I'm driving, I cannot avoid something which will come in my path, but I need to know how to break. So this is an important aspect on the path of action, where I need to learn to break. And then finally, I need to learn to steer. I need to be able to navigate through many different issues which will happen at work and life and everything. All these things, I need to be able to steer through them, how to do this. So all these things are done at the path of action. And finally, the last one is I need to learn how to maintain myself, how to sustain myself, and not really jump anything and everywhere. So, I need to maintain this aspect of my life itself. So to do all this, I need to do all these 5 things. These are all the 5 things that is needed for a life of action. Once I do this, and once I really understand how I can manage this, my ride on the bike is a piece of cake. I don't have to do anything. I can just enjoy. I don't have to think of any of these things, right? So this is how you can actually compare a path of action and a path of knowledge. Once you've done this, the path of knowledge, you don't have to worry about all the things about the action, and you are really ready to just be in that state and just enjoy. Enjoy our own bliss, that is the happiness. So this is what we are seeing is the path of action versus path of knowledge. So let us see how that relates to the shloka which is coming up. Na karmanam anarambhat, na karmanam anarambhat, naishkarmyam purushoshnute, naishkarmyam purushoshnute, nacha sanyasana deva, nacha sanyasana deva, siddhim samadhi gacchati, siddhim samadhi gacchati. So, karmanam anarambhat, that means neither by non-performance of actions. Non-performance of anarambhat. Anarambhat meaning that which is a beginning or an undertaking. So neither by not beginning an action, neither by not undertaking any new actions, nor will a man ever, neither by non-performance of action, does a person reach the state of actionlessness. So let's take that example of the bike. We said that you have to do all those 5 actions to be able to sit on the bike. Now, is there a way that we can actually sit on the bike immediately? Not really, right? Now, Arjuna is wanting to do that. He is just thinking that he can just jump and reach the state of that naishkarmyam, which is actionlessness. Na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushoshnute. So neither by non-performance does a man reach actionlessness. Nacha sanyasanad eva. Nor even by mere renunciation does he attain perfection. So, nacha sanyasanadeva, nor even through mere renunciation can he attain this perfection. Indicating that for Arjuna, that there is no way you can actually glide into this path of knowledge where naishkarmyam, basically the state of actionlessness, is that highest state. It is that state of knowledge. So we see Lord Krishna telling Arjuna that there is just no way that you can actually reach the state by not doing any action, nor can you actually reach the state by giving up any action. Sannyasa, this is renunciation, by giving up any action. So both of them is not going to be possible by you. So Arjuna must have thought, okay, let's, by not beginning any new karmas and renouncing any this one, I will not get actionlessness. Why not? Why not? Why can't I do that, Krishna? Because Krishna reminds him then that that state of knowledge, that Naishkarmyam state, has actually nothing to do with action, which is what the first line says, nothing to do with action, nor is it anything to do with inaction. Sounds a little confusing, right? On one hand, I said that you have to do all this path of action and the path of knowledge. But now if you understand, all the path of action is in the first step, path of action. So here you have Arjuna saying that, how is that possible? How can I reach that state of actionlessness without this one? Which is why now you see it's 2 different steps here. Path of knowledge is a path of naishkarmyam or actionlessness. So let us see this a little bit more on what do we mean by this word naishkarmyam or actionlessness. To do this, we should first really, really understand what action itself means. We are so used to acting in this world, we just jump. Somebody says something to do this, we just don't think, we just do it, right? So we need to first look at the sort of the genesis of action, if you will. What are the steps that is involved at the level of action, whether it's at the mind, or whether it is at a body level, whether it is at a mind level, or it is at an intellectual level. Essentially, we are always doing something or the other, right? But to do this action is always prompted in some way by a thought. The thought is that I need to do this action. And how does this thought really make a person go further? It is something we call as a desire. I need to do. For example, if I have to watch TV, why am I watching TV? I'm watching TV because watching TV gives me happiness. But in order to get that happiness, I have to do action. So I go there, I turn on the remote to see the TV. But to see that TV itself, there is first a thought that comes to my mind that TV, watching something on the TV gives me happiness, and that thought is planted in my mind. So that thought is the previous thought to this thought, which is making me go and see this TV here. So that thought was prompted, like I said, by this something which is a lot more subtle in my mind, which is called as a desire for watching TV. Now, this desire is also, you might say it's a thought, but here I'm just distinguishing the thought as the desire being even more subtler, which is there in my mind in a kind of a seed state, in the seed form, which gets actually triggered by something in the environment, or it might be something in the environment, or maybe something because I'm bored or something. Then that desire gets triggered into this thought, which leads to that action. Now, that desire itself is even more, there's something even more subtler than that, which is called as a vasana. A vasana is just a name given to that seed. I mentioned desire is a seed, but desire is a thought. You have vasana, which is a seed, which is even more subtler. And that one is the one which leads me to look at what the TV is. Now, you would think that the buck stops here and that the vasana is leading to the action, right? But actually, there is something even more deeper than that. Now, here we are looking at this vasana only for watching TV. But I may have a vasana for having tea. I may have vasana for watching a movie. All these are different kind of vasanas, which always are embedded in my psyche, which at some point gets activated towards the action. So the one thing which is even more subtler than this is what we call as ignorance, as avidya or ignorance. And that is the one which really prompts me to get up and do all this action here. So you see, there is so much that is going on in order to when an action takes place. And here we are talking about naishkarmyam, which is a state of actionlessness, which is what Lord Krishna is really pointing out as a path of knowledge. And then you have the karma yoga, which is a path of action, where the action is done by surrendering the fruits of action and also giving up the sense of doership. So that is really the level of actionlessness. So just to lighten up a little bit here, I want to put up this cartoon here. I hope you like it. So naishkarmyam, or state of actionlessness, is definitely not this what is shown here, where you have the instructor saying, imagine a quiet state, an oasis of calm where you leave everything behind and you experience the true peace. And you see how naishkarmyam cannot really happen for all of us, where our mind is always action dependent. You see one person, dreaming of a vacation in an island, somebody who's think that same thought, what she's trying to get the calmness, this one, and somebody else thinking about a techie thing which a person needs to address. Another thing also is that naishkarmyam doesn't necessarily happen immediately. Even as I'm sitting down, when I'm saying Om, there is all kinds of these thoughts happen. So naishkarmyam is a very difficult state to get to the thing here. So that's basically what Lord Krishna is warning Arjuna about, why that state of actionlessness is so very difficult. And the reason why he's also saying this, because Krishna must have thought in his mind, here we have Arjuna who is wanting to run away. Remember, he said that, right? In the beginning of second chapter, and even at the end, and first, he said he wanted to run away from the battlefield and he wanted to run to the Himalayas and try to be there. But there is no way he would have been able to, because this is the kind of thoughts that he would have gone through his mind. So moving forward in shloka number 6 and shloka number 5, Krishna again continues to tell Arjuna about why it is so difficult for people to really reach that state of knowledge, or the state or into the path of knowledge, because you have to, we are people of action. And this is what he's trying to tell here in shloka number 5. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi, nahi kaschit kshanamapi, jatu tishtatya karma krita, jatu tishtatya karma krita, karyate hyavashah karma, karyate hyavashah karma, sarva prakriti jair gunaihi, sarva prakriti jair gunaihi, nahi kaschit kshanamapi, jatu tishtatya karma krita, karyate hyavashah karma, sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. So he's saying that why is it that we cannot be without performing action, or why is it that it's difficult for us to get to that state of naishkarmya immediately? This is because nahi kaschit, no one, kshanamapi, kshanam, which is even for a moment, even for a minute, jatu tishtati akarma kriti. Jatu can ever, anybody can remain in the state of akarma krit. Akarma meaning not performing action. That person, you cannot imagine such a person giving up all kind of karmas. Such a person can definitely not live like that in this world at all. Because he says, karyate, we are made to act avashaha meaning helplessly. Even if I don't want to, I'm forced to act. How is that possible? How is it that, why is it that I'm helplessly acting like this? Is there, who is trying to make me do this? So he says that sarvaha prakriti jai gunaihi, prakriti jai gunaihi, prakritihi gunaihi. So we are all made to act by our own gunas. Nobody is really need to tell us anything to do. We ourselves are made to act like this. And that is what I'm showing here in this thing here. So even for a moment, I cannot sit quietly in meditation, for example, because all kinds of thoughts, they keep coming up and bothering me about even when I'm sitting down. So such is the case about us, because even as I'm sitting down, my senses are wanting something, or even when I'm trying to sleep, my thoughts are trying to come and disturb me while I'm wanting to sleep. And even when I'm sleeping, my own breathing goes on all the time. So we consider ourselves as a bundle of all these 5 layers, starting from the Annamaya Kosha, which is my body. And then I have my Pranamaya Kosha, my Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. All these koshas, all of them are constantly acting all the time. So there is just no way that I can ever can sit quietly at all. There is too many tendencies, like we talked about those vasanas. And not only that, my own nature, which is rajasic, or whether I'm tamasic. Of course, if you're tamasic, you probably are not doing much, or even if you're doing much, it is probably not done with the right intention. Or sattvic activities, any one of them, all these are prompted by my gunas and the vasanas which are there. So indirectly, now you see Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, I know you think you can just run away to the Himalayas and do something there. I want to tell you, if you go there, hey Arjuna, you will have so much amount of feelings that, that Karna, I know I should have done something to him. How did I let him go like that? And you're probably going to take, your sword and cut down all those trees in Himalayas. We don't want you to, be so ecologically unfriendly over there. So I'm telling you, there is just no way that you can get to that state of knowledge for that reason. So for that, he says, again, coming back, he wants to tell him that karma yoga is a kind of a good path for you, Arjuna, because it allows you to give up your ownership and you can move ahead. So he's just trying to again tell him that there is just no way you can get to that state now. So then let's see what further does Krishna wants to tell him about this dangers of wanting to go to the Himalayas, wanting to get into the premature meditation, which we saw in those two cartoons there. But let's read the shloka itself. Karmendriyani sanyamya Karmendriyani sanyamya Ya aste manasa smaran Ya aste manasa smaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mithyacharasya uchyate Mithyacharasya uchyate Karmendriyani sanyamya Ya aste manasa smaran Indriyarthan vimudhatma Mithyacharasya uchyate. So he's trying to tell him that karmendriyani, all the organs of karmendriya meaning karma indriya, organs of action, karmendriyani sanyamya meaning that restraining it or restricting it. If somebody thinks that he can do that merely by restricting the organs of action, yaha aste manasa smaran, he who sits like that, even thinking in his mind that way, manasa smaran, thinking of what happens when he does that. That the cartoon shows that indriyarthan vimudatma, he's only sitting thinking about all these sense objects, and he's nothing but a vimudha meaning that person who is of a deluded mind, mudha meaning almost a fool, but vimudhatma means such a person who's a deluded fool. That's what he's trying to show here. And such a person is a mithyachara indicating that mithya acharaha iti, which is acharaha indicating a conduct, mithya meaning false. So such a person is really a hypocrite. Mithyachara indicating a hypocrite, one who is of a false nature. Such a person is called as a mithyachara. So pretty strong words where Krishna is trying to again tell Arjuna about how Arjuna would not really succeed in this path of knowledge immediately. He would only be a mithyachara or a hypocrite by doing this, because there is no way he's going to be able to keep his mind clear in such a way that the highest knowledge can dawn on him. So in order to do that, he has to first go through, like we said, the path of karma and try and see how he can get rid of his vasanas. As I gave the genesis of action there, from action to thought to desire to vasanas to avidya. And we haven't covered a lot about what avidya means, but suffice to say that avidya means ignorance. It means ignorance of truly what my nature is. Today, I think my nature is this physical body with my mind and intellect. And because of this, I function in this world and I give a reality to it. So to get to that state of knowledge, to get to understanding really the knowledge, we need to have that purity of mind, and that cannot be possible. And that to get to that knowledge, you need to go through the steps of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam being the state of meditation. But that is not possible, is what Krishna is telling Arjuna at this stage, because your mind is full of thoughts of different things. And even if you were to sit down and meditate in Himalayas, for example, your mind is going to be clouded with this. And so let's not try to go there. Such a person would be called as a hypocrite. So Arjuna, I want to give you this. So he's giving this. And in the next set of shlokas, we will see then what does a person who's not a mithyachara would do. What is it? How does he conduct his life in order to get to that state? So we'll stop with this because that completes the thought process here with this section. And from the shloka number 7, we start with the next thought process. So we will meet again next week and we'll stop here. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shantihi.